Welcome to the Show Me the Way podcast. I am your host, Andrea Miller, alongside a dear, dear friend, Tammy Thompson, and we are so excited to bring this podcast to you. Show Me the Way podcast is a podcast dedicated to exploring the journeys of those who have faced adversity and found themselves on unexpected paths. We will have meaningful, thoughtful conversations about challenges we have faced and how we discovered and forged new direction. Prepare to be inspired and to uncover your own strength as you listen to relatable and motivating stories. Life has a way of twisting and turning, and we often need a fresh perspective to understand how to navigate. Let's show each other the way. In this episode, we sit down with our friend and sorority sister, Andrea Rossi, for an eye-opening and heartfelt conversation. Andrea is a busy wife, mother of 3, and a dedicated doctor running her own practice. As a true go-getter, she thrived on being involved, driving her kids to activities, serving on committees, coaching, and even leading Girl Scouts. However, life took an unexpected turn when her oldest daughter was diagnosed with an eating disorder. Despite being doctors, Andrea and her husband were shocked they hadn't recognized the signs earlier. Andrea openly shares the raw emotional journey of shifting her priorities entirely to support her daughter through recovery. 3 years later, Andrea continues to focus on her daughter's health and independence while balancing the demands of her life. Her resilience and determination offer relatable insights and inspiration for anyone facing challenges in caregiving or personal growth. This is a powerful conversation you won't want to miss. Welcome back to the Show Me the Way podcast. Today is so fun as we're talking to one of our friends and sorority sisters, Andrea Rossi. Tammy and I have been friends with Andrea for over 25 years, and we have shared so many memories. Good times in college, weddings, births of children, so much in between. We could go on and on. Andrea is one of the most animated and full of life persons, and you can't help but smile and enjoy laughs when she's around. She's extremely intelligent. She's a wife. She's a mom of 3 kids. She's a doctor. We're thrilled to have her on our podcast, and she's so incredibly busy. So I'm excited that she was able to give us some time. She's always on the go. She's got her kids going everywhere. So it's really cool that we were able to lock in some time with her. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome, Andrea.
Thank you for having me, ladies.
Of course. So excited to talk to you. And it's just wonderful to see you and hear from you after quite some time. So many of our sorority sisters were just people that don't see each other for a while. But the second we are in a room together or we're online together, we can just jump right back in like there hasn't been that much time apart. So it's wonderful to have that. Excited to have you on. Before we jump in, we want to hear more about you. I shared a little bit, but would love to hear more about Andrea Rossi.
Hi, everybody. So I have a lot of parallels actually with Andrea's story as far as like our background. Also, my name is Andrea. We have that going at the same time for us. But same thing, like totally nuclear family. My mom and dad were married, 3 sisters, stayed married until my father passed away a couple years ago. Went right from high school to college, met these lovely ladies in college, went straight from college to medical school, went straight from medical school to residency, met my husband in residency, whirlwind romance, and got married pretty quickly, and then had 3 kids, and basically living the dream as far as like what I had in store for myself. And currently I have a 17-year-old today, actually of today's recording. Julia's
Wow.
17
Happy
today.
birthday, Julia.
I know. And then I have Sophia, 14, and then Max, who's 12. So 3 kids, and teaching at Oakland University Medical School as far as adjunct professor in Michigan State, and still in full neurology practice, and coached cheerleading for a while, was a Girl Scout leader at my kids' school for a while. My husband coaches soccer at the school, doing being on the Parent Teacher Guild. So, busy is all relative, but pretty busy life. And all 3 kids play at least 3 sports, and they all do an instrument as well. A lot of running around up until the story that causes the pivot in life.
You wear so many hats. I mean, so many of us do, but it's crazy that we got you for this time. And you also travel quite a bit too. It always seems you're skiing or you're doing this or you're doing that. So you squeeze in a lot of good family time too, which is just amazing with your schedule.
efficient use of time, very
There you go.
efficient use of
I
time.
like that. And I like how you said you and your husband had a whirlwind romance because I do think of that often, for some people that maybe have specific time frames in their head. You didn't date that long before you got married. And how long have you been married?
19 years next month, but we only dated like 4.5 months before we got engaged.
I remember that. When
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and we love your husband, so I can
Yeah.
see why you guys
Yeah.
made that work. You make such a great pair.
He's pretty cool. I
Wow.
like him still.
Pretty cool. Good. I'm glad you like him still. That's very important after 19 years of marriage. So, well, yes, like I tell everybody, we all have stories. You have a million. We probably could. I tell a lot of people this too. We could probably have you on for 4 different stories to share. You could go in detail about when you went to medical school. You could talk about your time with your husband. You could talk about each child separately. There are so many stories that you could share. But I know when we started talking about my podcast, some things came to mind. And we're always looking for a time when you thought you were on one particular path and you knew that you had to pivot and what that looks like and how you reacted and advice and inspiration you have for our listeners. And you're right. When you talk about getting married and having kids, you just think this path is going one way. And then there's always things that come up. And I don't know that we recognize that when we're younger. So when
Right.
we're older, we have this perspective. It's good to look back and then also share with others. With that, I'm going to let you share a time when you thought something was going one particular way and you had to pivot.
Yeah. And I chose this story. I mean, it was the first story I thought of because I feel like this, of all the little stories of adversity, like being a physician in COVID or being on bed rest for several months with two toddlers and, literally in a hospital, all of that stuff, like those were all transient things that like eventually go away. So this story is really more about something that's truly never going to go away. And then two, it does have a medical aspect to it. And I didn't, as I was listening to all of your prior shows, like, okay, hopefully nobody's bored of like, okay, here's another medical story. But I think it's important because there's actually a huge psychological component. And I think it just is so important to get out there. This is something that happens to anybody, like a psychological illness, right? And then two, just knowing that it's okay to talk about it, because once you start talking about it openly, people come out of the woodwork and say, oh my gosh, this happened to me when I was in college or high school, or this happened to my child, or I'm currently struggling with this or whatever. So as we already said, it's super busy, like pretty much before this whole thing happened, like my my theory was I don't have time for that. Like I don't have time for weird stuff to happen in my life. I don't have time to get cancer or to have a sick kid, or like that's so ridiculous. Like who does? So like, oh, good thing that's never happened because I just don't have that time, right? So this all started about 3 years ago when my oldest was transitioning from middle school to high school. And again, my husband and I are both physicians. I'm a neurologist, he's an internist. So very, very involved in the medical aspect of things. Also involved parents. Over the summer between middle school and high school, my daughter started losing weight pretty drastically. And she lost between May of her 8th grade year and like August of her 9th grade year, 40 pounds. So 40 pounds in 4 months. And her hair started falling out and she started getting really thirsty and she started going pee a lot. And then she's like, Mom, I didn't have a period last month. And now that I think about it, I don't think I did the month before either. So as of two physicians were like, oh shoot, Julia might have diabetes or like a thyroid condition or something. She's peeing all the time. She's drinking all this water. She has lost all this weight, which is all like signs of diabetes. And always like the medical people are going to go to the medical. So as in classic doctor fashion, rather than actually going to the pediatrician, we texted our family pediatrician and was like, can we do a panel for diabetes and thyroid and do kind of the metabolic checkup? Because, Julia's losing all this weight and she's really going pee a lot. And it's a little concerning that maybe I think she might have diabetes. So we take her in and get the blood work without seeing a physician, by the way, like besides me and my husband. And the pediatrician calls me and she said, Andrea, everything's normal. So it's immediately I knew Julie has an eating disorder. Very lucky we live in the Detroit metro area where there's access to subspecialists for eating disorders. So able to pull some strings and I got her in, and this is very not normal. And anybody who listens to this podcast who has a child with an eating disorder or who has had an eating disorder and had it treated professionally, like usually a wait list to get in with an eating disorder clinics like months. I got Julia in like a week because I knew the doctor that I trained with the doctor who runs one of the clinics locally. So I got her in and she examined her and she was hypothermic, the medical term for had a super low temperature. Her blood pressure was very low and she had a heart rate of 22. So normal resting heart rate is 60 to 100. So basically, she was actively dying of starvation. And she was immediately taken to the hospital from that visit of like learning, oh, wow, my daughter has anorexia, to like went from 0 to 100, like, and like at that point, right? Go ahead.
Was she still playing sports at this time?
Yes, yes. So my daughter's a four-sport athlete, and she was playing high school sports. So kind of initially when this all happened, I was thinking, okay, she's running way more. Like she's choosing. She was always kind of a junk food kid, so I'm like, okay, she's trying to get ready for like a high school sport. Like this is more intense, a high school sport. Yes, running every day, playing her field hockey every. I mean, she literally could have just dropped dead on the field hockey field. I don't know how she never got lightheaded, or you hear about these girls that, or boys who pass out playing their sport when they're malnourished, but somehow that didn't happen. Thanks be to God. But the fact that two physicians, you think back and you're like, okay, we're both doctors. What the heck is wrong with us? Like, but when it comes to your own kid, and you're like just doing your thing and like don't necessarily maybe subconsciously want anything to be wrong, or don't have quote unquote time for anything to be wrong, like you just can explain it away, right? Like you're growing, she gained a couple inches, oh, she's just slimming out through puberty now. So there's like all these excuses that you can make, but then looking back, you aren't happy with yourself. But in the grand scheme of things, for anorexia and for a diagnosis from onset, it was really pretty quick. Like under 6 months is nearly unheard of. But basically, she had to be hospitalized for a little less than a week to stabilize her medically. And she had to relearn how to eat. So at the time that she was admitted, when she talked to the physicians and kind of started just telling us everything, she was always eating dinner. She ate dinner every day normally with us. And we're an old school family, so we eat dinner together despite how busy we are. It might be at 4:30 or 8:30, but we always eat dinner together. I always cook, and I'll use a quotation mark for this, but like quote unquote healthy meals. So chicken and vegetables or whatever. She always ate all of her food at dinner. So I kept thinking to myself, oh, well, I don't know how it could be an eating disorder. She eats, but literally you can't not eat at all or you'll die within 2 weeks. Trying to figure out what to do from there. The first thing was, okay, my daughter has anorexia, and like now what? And surprisingly, for two physicians, like really in medical school, there was it was during our nutrition class, not during psych, not during medicine. It was like a 2-paragraph part in our textbook, 2 paragraphs. Like, this is anorexia. So I think the first thing, like as far as the pivot, was, okay, I can't go to work today. I'm going to cancel patients today, which has only happened twice in my now 20-year career. And it was when my appendix ruptured, and then when I went on emergent bed rest with my youngest child. So like me canceling patients for like not my own medical issue has never happened ever until that day. And then it just puts your whole life in perspective, right? I'm not too busy to make sure my kid doesn't die, to put it bluntly, but just trying to figure out like, okay, where do we go wrong, and like figuring this out, and then actually educating myself was huge. So when a doctor who has control issues has no control over a situation and wants to learn about relatively rare medical slash psychological illness, the first thing we do is just like learn, right? So I read 7 textbooks cover to cover like a real nerd, and really initially was pretty shocked at how much research has been done since I went to medical school on specifically anorexia. I mean, I could say global eating disorders, but really my focus is more on anorexia. And like how much change, like literally like physiologic change in the brain has happened. And I'm a neurologist, you guys. So I was like, we didn't learn any of this. Literally, people who have anorexia, or just anybody who's malnourished for maybe a medical problem, like a GI problem or whatever, their brain literally shrinks. I was like, oh my God, my kid's brain is shrinking. Like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe this is happening. And then like just learning like, okay, you can fix some of the atrophy just with nutrition, and like just learning all about that. And then from there, the pivot was, okay,
Is the brain shrinking as a result of the disorder?
yes,
Or is it happening first and causing the disorder?
it's happening as a result, not necessarily the psychological part of the disorder of the fear of gaining weight, the fear of eating, but the physical part of malnutrition.
So not only does the body shrink, the brain is part of
Yes.
the body, right? So the
Right.
whole body is
Yep. So your
shrinking.
muscles are atrophying, your heart is
Yes.
atrophying, your like all your
Crazy.
organs, like your kidneys are
Wow.
getting smaller, your bladder's getting smaller, you're losing your period, your uterus is shrinking, your brain is shrinking too, because it's just not getting
Crazy.
enough nutrition. And kind of how I'll get into this later about like some of my pivots as far as educating is concerned as a physician, like how like the hypothermia and the low blood pressure and the low heart rate, like all of that, it's like almost like your body starts to go in hibernation like a bear. That's what happens to a bear, right? So because you're trying to conserve as much energy as possible, because you're not giving yourself enough energy to sustain like just walking around, let alone playing field hockey or whatever sport might be during that season. Like it's just kind of amazing. If it wasn't happening to my kid, Like I have these two parallel things in my mind. Like, this is so intriguing. Like, I cannot believe that your whole primal drive in your brain is to live, but like this one piece of your brain's turned off. Like, if the choice is to die or to eat, like not consciously, but like pretty much I'm choosing to die slowly and weirdly. A person who's been starving, like in Auschwitz or whatever it might be. So it's really intriguing. And then that itself, the atrophy in the brain, the shrinkage of the brain, that can augment all of the weird behaviors too, of like not wanting to eat or having ritualistic eating. Or, for example, when she first was diagnosed and we were in the hospital, it would take her 2 hours to eat like a regular person's dinner because she was so worried about that food, and a little bit of like OCD with it. Like, okay, each bite has to be 20 chews and I had to take 4 sips of water with each bite or whatever it might be. It's like augmenting all these behaviors. Learning that I'm getting a little sciencey. And actually, kind of on a side note, I think that's been my best way to cope is like, okay, if I can cerebralize this and like say, okay, this is not what people think, like just eat, just eat. Well, it's not really, it doesn't work that way. Just like you can't tell a schizophrenic, well, just stop hallucinating, or can't tell like a dementia patient, well, just remember. Like it's not something you just do. So kind of learning about that process, and then to doing that pivot of, okay, now what's next? Like, so you read all these books, and the treatment for acute anorexia is after they're medically stabilized. There's the gold standard of treating anorexia is to basically take over like they're a toddler again and feed them every 2 to 3 hours. So they have to eat 6 times a day. And trying to tell a teenage girl what to do is like kind of like having a toddler again, except for they hate you. And there's a fight 6 times a day to eat. Just figuring out, okay, how are we going to do this? How are we going to be, it's called family-based therapy is the technical term for this. And it's the family's in charge of the person who's struggling eating. And this can happen in adults too, if they're being intervened on for having eating anorexia specifically. But basically, like, you're in charge of what they eat. They have to eat it, or there's some kind of repercussion. So like learning how to cope with a kid who you're fighting with, plus having 2 other kids who were little at the time, I mean, 9 and 11. So not really knowing what's going on, and trying to figure out, okay, how do we do this as two physicians? Like, do I have to take a sabbatical? How are we going to do this? So kind of that first pivot as a professional was learning, and then saying, okay, my kid means more to me than anything. I could take care and fix as many neurologic patients as I can. But if my kid is dying in front of me while I'm trying to take care of other people, how is that going to fill my bucket anyway? So the first pivot was changing my office hours. My husband and I had a talk. How are we going to alternate so someone is always home before school so we can make sure not just her, but the other two are eating breakfast? And then how, yeah, at least at school, there's some supervision with care plan, if you will. And then someone has to be home after school for a snack and for dinner and for the other snack after dinner. Just alternating. We chose like which days either of us could adjust. So every day, even to this day, so this was 3 years ago, one of us is always home and getting the kids to school, and one of us is always home when the kids come home from school or picking up from school. That's a big tap dance to do, but we've been able to make it work. I think that if you could pick any title for this show today, like today's show, maybe it's learning to say no. Because both professionally and personally, I've learned to say no kind of organically anyway. I'm not doing Girl Scouts anymore. The girls kind of outgrew that. I'm not coaching cheer anymore because they're not doing that. I actually stepped down from the Parent Teacher Guild, and I'm using my resources in other ways and trying to be around the family as much as possible as a caregiver / mom, and then trying to figure out as a mom. And Andrea, you can sympathize with this, like trying to give the kid that needs attention the attention they need as a caregiver, but then also not neglect the other two when there was such a drastic change in the house like that, right? Like they need attention too. They have their issues too that they need as, kids without any special needs, whether it's physically or psychologically, or maybe that little mesh, trying to figure out that tightrope. So that was probably the biggest pivot. And then the professional pivot too is I used to be on the board of examiners for my national college. So I don't do that anymore. I just write questions when I can for the exams, not doing as much, not hosting as many students through the medical schools, and not doing the extra committees. I've used my resources of learning all of this stuff and knowing that, neurologists and internists and pediatricians and family practice doctors, especially those of us who were trained before 2010, don't have this background knowledge. So educating. So I'll do lectures for both nationally, and then I do a lot through the medical school at Oakland University and through Michigan State, just teaching people like about like the neurobiological changes of anorexia. So it's not just a psychological illness, it's a psychological illness that it's the number 2 reason for death in all psychological illnesses besides narcotic overdose. So just knowing like, you got to feed the kids and you got to learn how to caretake, or else like it's like medicine. Like you wouldn't skip, medication for a diabetic kid. So you can't skip a meal for a kid who has anorexia, and just teaching that rather than doing the volunteering that I was doing so much at school with Girl Scouts and coaching. My volunteering now is more on like the educational end on that. But then I got hooked up with Parents Together. I don't know if you guys have heard of that. It's an advocacy group for parents. It's partly an internet safety group advocating for our state for some help with internet and social media safety and teenagers, because we're Gen Xers, so we didn't know how to parent this stuff because we didn't grow up with it. When Julia was diagnosed, the day she went to the hospital, I took her phone and she had like 13 apps, you guys, on weight loss, calorie counting, different exercise programs. So I had to figure out. And then if you looked at her feed and her TikTok, for example, it was literally 100% what I ate in a day. This exercise will make you burn belly fat. Here's a cleansing thing. Teenagers in general are still growing. They're not meant to diet. Like they're still growing. So all these things for the advocacy group, kind of working on the legislative side and not super involved, but like to tell the story of this is how an internet search in a kid for things that are meant for adults can harm them, besides all the other stuff you hear about, right?
What was it like for her when you took her phone away? Like, was she really angry at you?
And this was during her hospitalization. I think, honestly, Andrea, she was so tired, from probably the charade and hiding things, literally tired from being malnourished and not having a heart rate. She was almost like a zombie. She just let me take it. She just let us put her in the hospital. So maybe she almost like knew way, way
Ready
deep
almost.
down.
Mhm.
Yeah. Which maybe not, but she didn't have the fight in her at that point. But
That
so
makes
now
sense.
she's nourished, so she has lots of fight
She
in
has
her.
lots of fight. What about the other thing? What about her close friends? Was anyone else going through this at the same time that
So
you know
not
of?
that I know of, but she did actually once. Kind of it came out that she was hospitalized. It was her first homecoming too, you guys. She got hospitalized the day before her very first
Uh,
homecoming in ninth grade. So like that
uh,
was hard for me. I was like, I can't believe she's gonna miss out on this stuff, and I can't believe she has to go to a hospital. In retrospect, you guys know me, I like use humor when something horrible's
Right.
happening. So I
Yeah.
literally called my business partner, who, by the way, also has a child with anorexia. So it was a great support system. And then I said, well, just like Anchorman, that escalated quickly because I just thought I was going to see if she had it or not. And now she's in a hospital. Once it was like came out, her two closest friends at school were like, we knew something was wrong, but we didn't know, they're kids. Like they don't know how to deal with it or what to say, or who do you tell and then she did have two friends, close family friends, that their moms, like earlier in the summer, had said, Julia's kind of doing weird stuff when she spends the night at our house. And I was like, really? Okay, well, I'll keep my eye on it. But then it kind of escalated from there. Her friends were actually really supportive. Kids are so supportive.
They're amazing.
Like all this stuff, like mental illness. There's not many mental illnesses that also have such a strong medical part. My daughter goes to a school. She goes to all girls Catholic high school, and as a prep, as they're like very strong in academics, and they're a huge like prep school, right? Like prepping for college. So they have kind of a college style schedule, and they don't have a proper lunch. So the amount of girls that I've seen as a parent in the waiting room at the eating disorder clinic of these girls that go to this high school is insane, because it's so easy to hide if you don't have a proper lunch, because no one's like, I didn't see you eat lunch, because you could tell your friends in third hour, oh, I ate lunch. I'm eating lunch in fourth hour. And then you could tell your fourth hour friends, oh, I ate lunch last class. We just don't have the class together. And it's so easy to hide an eating disorder. Like it's rampant in this age group, and with the social media, it's made it worse for sure. And then personally, you go through this change in yourself too. I'm disordered, and I didn't realize like as much as I was until I started dealing with all this stuff with Julia. So I'm like, oh my gosh, did I do this to my kid? You can't do a psychological illness to your kid.
No.
It certainly doesn't help to have that mentality like, I'm being bad today, I had a cookie, or incessantly working out or feeling guilty because you didn't work out. Even though I don't have an eating disorder proper, I have disordered thoughts around body image and exercise and eating, and trying to make that flip and understanding how she felt when I was like, you have to gain like 20 pounds. I would freak if someone told me I had to gain 20 pounds and I don't have like that full scale of a true eating disorder. Like that's scary. But then with the other two, they're like, this is weird. You used to go, okay, you should moderate everything in moderation. Now you're like, you want to eat a cake? Eat a cake. You want to eat ice cream? Go for it. Like, here's more food. Put butter on that. So it was a little confusing for the other two too, because I went like this huge switch as a mom from trying to be quote unquote healthy and doing that healthy lifestyle, which maybe not not too healthy, to trying to figure out what the proper thing to do is. Walk that tightrope of, like, we don't want to give our own disorders to our children, and some of that's genetic too, right? It's
Society does, like, our
yes,
society does this to us
yeah,
too.
I kind of want to just kind of bring it together here a little bit.
yeah,
I'm relating big time because of what I went through with
right,
my son with muscular dystrophy. So when you talk about having to change your work schedule, now that's a little bit different with two physicians than it was with me. It was a little easier for me to just try something different.
yeah,
But it's very, I mean, it kind of messes with you almost like, wait, I was doing this and now I have
yeah,
to stop. But then when you said your daughter is more important to you than anything else, there's nothing more true than that. You just have to do what you have to do because
right,
that you have to take care of your child. So I commend you for recognizing that. I also think a lot of our friends from college, a lot of our sorority sisters, we type A and go getters. There's so many people that in our group that have just
right,
excelled and gotten their masters and their doctorates and all of this stuff. And so to say no to things, I
right,
commend you for saying time out. This is way more important.
right,
And from a third party perspective, it's very easy to be like, it's very easy for you to say, wow, how did I not see this? I'm a doctor. My husband
yeah,
is a doctor. How did I not see this? But from a third party perspective, it's like, I can see how you didn't see it.
yeah,
You don't want to think things are wrong. You don't want to think this is going on. You don't have time. You get into your busy life.
You
Um,
don't see the things that you're too close to either.
right.
right.
And
You need other people to tell you
That's
yeah.
why doctors
sometimes.
shouldn't doctor their own family. I mean,
Yeah,
Well,
honestly,
I
yeah.
mean,
it affects your judgment when there's like an emotion,
yeah,
behind it.
there
Yeah.
is. And I can look back and say, I should have known he had muscular dystrophy by all of these details, but you can't look back. I mean, it is what it is. And it's awesome that you have looked forward and that you and your husband continue to do what you need to do for her even 3 years later. And I want to get more into that. The other thing is just this eating, how we don't recognize how much it is about psychologically thinking. It really reminds me of a couple things. One, I was gonna say, was she counting calories? Because I think
Yes.
that is just it's something you can control,
Hmm.
and it just becomes such an obsession. I can see how you could have an OCD situation with that, and
Hmm.
then doctoring yourself almost. Like, I only need this, according to what I saw on TikTok. I only
Hmm.
need this amount of calories to live, and there's so much more involved. We're learning every day that there's so much more involved than just the calorie thing. It's very hard to consider everything else. I'm glad that you did so much research and that we're finding that there's more information now than there was
Right.
back then. So you can understand what you need for health. But you also made me think of your three different children. In my case, two different children. One of them is on a steroid every single day, and he has gained in the
Yeah.
last few years. And I'm always telling him, maybe cut back. Maybe don't have that extra piece of bread. Maybe you shouldn't have two helpings of that. And he'll get mad at me. What, you think I'm fat? You think I have an issue? He'll say
Mm.
those things to me.
Yeah.
In the meantime, my other son burns more calories than he takes in. So I'm
Right.
like, you want a chocolate frosty? you
Right.
you want to eat this whole piece of cake? Like, go eat everything. Do you want me to make you another plate? Eat more. And it's hard when you have two children and the one's hearing the one thing and the other's hearing something different.
Yeah.
So again, commend you for having to recognize that and having to understand how to parent all of these children differently.
Yeah. It's a lot, right? Like, just trying to figure out, every kid is different and they all have such different needs. And one of my friends who's a pediatrician said at one point, when I was really struggling with, okay, I don't want to neglect the other two, just really trying to make sure that they had their needs met too. She said, okay, but parenting is fluid. She may need this help right now, but there may be some time when she's doing better that one of the other ones, you got to focus on the other one or whatever. So that
Great
was helpful
advice.
too.
Great
Yeah.
advice.
And I
Yeah.
would say too, like, my other pivot after all of this is like, we were so social. Like, I grew up in Michigan. I went to college in Michigan. I did my residency in Michigan. So I have all these friends and families from so many factions of my life locally, and was always doing, if I wasn't busy doing like the sports and the volunteering, we pretty much only do stuff as a family right now for the last 3 years. But then too, recently having that pivot of, okay, this is not just a short-term thing. I
Mhm.
can't not take care of myself or my needs either. Like, I have to make sure I'm doing stuff to make myself healthy. I can't feed a 17-year-old 6 times a day forever. So we have made some pivots in her eating disorder world for how she's going to start being independent. And she has already started doing that. She's doing a really good job. How are we going to prep her for going to college and me not being
Right.
there?
When you won't be observing. I was
Mhm.
thinking about that. How is her mental state about things now?
She does well. She's still like, and this is a hallmark of having anorexia. She's like, well, you guys are dramatic. I don't really have anorexia. I know you gotta eat. Like it's like that relative thing. And just as a 17-year-old teenager, a little resistant with something. Don't tell me what to do. You're trying to control me. I'm trying to get you independent, actually, so you can go on and move on with life. Just with like all medical issues, chronic medical issues, or mental health issues. Like there's ups and downs, and there's constant roller coaster to ride. But she is back in sports, and like we made our life a little harder with letting her do sports. But we also have to walk that tightrope of her being like a normal teenager. Like we don't want her to not be able to go to dances or play her 4 sports that she loves to play, or go on a date, go, whatever it might be, because she has eating disorder. Like, we don't want it to take over her life. Finding that tightrope too, and then just finding a way to help her be more independent so we can kind of move on and learn how to live with it, because it doesn't ever go away. There's always those little thoughts that creep in, and I fight even with my own self, like there's no diets in our house. All that stuff, all my talk
Mhm.
went out the
Mhm.
window with this. And it's, if I have to gain 1,000 pounds to make my kid be healthy, that's fine. But then I'm using her techniques too. For example, one thing that her therapist will give her is, you're not meant to fit in clothes. Clothes are meant to fit you. Just doing those little things. People equate weight so much, especially in the United States or, Western countries, of healthiness. Well, she wasn't healthy even though she was thin, right? And
Right.
I might be a little heavier than I used to be, but I don't have high blood pressure. I don't have diabetes. I don't have high cholesterol. Am I not unhealthy because I've gained a little bit of weight? You got to change your mentation about all of
I
that.
love the clothes are meant to fit you
Isn't that
because,
great?
especially, I mean, not to make this about women of our age, but as we get older, our
Right.
bodies change so much, and things don't fit like they used to fit on
Right.
any of us, no matter
Right.
what. If you have a pair of jeans and you're like, "Gosh, these are really tight around the middle," maybe you need to find a different brand because that's just
Right.
not doing it for you anymore. It's
Yeah.
not fitting
Yeah.
because your body has changed. It doesn't mean you're
Right.
out of shape or
Yes.
unhealthy or anything like that. Your body's changing.
Right.
And going back to the whole calorie thing, women our age too, we've learned about the whole calorie counting and have always done that kind of stuff. That really hurts us in perimenopause and menopause severely. It makes that whole time of our life worse.
Right.
Julia learning these things now
Right.
hopefully will help her throughout her life as
Yeah.
she
Right.
because a lot of us didn't learn any of this.
Right.
We didn't have social media, but we saw a lot of models on TV and in magazines
Or
and
how about when we were like tweens, like, get in shape, girl? Really? Get in shape? What about the boys? Our game is get in shape, girl, where you have like a jump rope. Like, that's messed up.
well, I think just having the 3 of us on here, we could talk for hours and hours, but also this very important story. I know that we could keep sharing more, but I want to come back to where we're at today and what you would say to people that maybe go through something similar or are just listening to everything you're sharing and thinking, I can relate. Okay, what
Yeah.
would you say to the listeners that might be really really relating to this?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is it shouldn't be taboo to talk about something that people can't help. I don't think people realize like how much, not just anorexia or eating disorders, but like psychological illnesses are a medical problem. There's a really like a biochemical change in someone's brain that makes things happen. So like being more open about it, because once I was open about it, and I walk a little bit of a tightrope because she doesn't necessarily want to be like have her whole everything aired all the time. She doesn't want to be on display necessarily. Just being open about it, because once I knew my business partner had a child with anorexia, but once I was open about it, I have a little unofficial support group now of 6 or 7 women that just in passing talking about it. She's like, oh gosh, I'm doing that too with my daughter. And I've been so alone. And the difference between a psychobiological illness versus a true like medical problem like Nathan, for example, not that you don't get support, but people don't understand it. Like you can see that Nathan's changed, right? The muscle atrophy, or that he's now in a wheelchair, and obviously he can't help it, right? It's
Right.
like a genetic problem. So the support of how can we help you with him, and how can we make your life easier as a caretaker, is a little more
Mhm.
apparent than like with a
Mhm.
psychological illness, right? Because people don't know how it works. And they're like, well, just tell her to eat. They're
Right.
not necessarily not supportive of us or of me as a caregiver or of her, but they don't understand it. So they don't know
They
how
don't know
to
what to say.
be supportive. Right.
Mhm.
Exactly.
Mhm.
So just knowing that even if it's just to listen to someone
Mhm.
or just say, oh, I'm still there for you. I know I can't really do much. Just knowing that this is something that, you know, kids, whatever it is, even if it's depression or self harm or whatever it might be, like those kids can't help it because it's a biological problem in their brain. And to be supportive of psychological illnesses, not just
medical illness is important as a friend and a professional and caregiver. So I think that's probably the biggest take home. And two, learning how to say no. Like, I'm not the only neurologist in the Metro Detroit area. I'm not the only Girl Scout leader or cheerleading coach on earth. Those positions can be taken up by other people when it's time for you to focus on your own family and your own stuff going on inside of your own home. So I think those are like the two biggest take homes, I would say.
And I would say to your point at the beginning that once you start talking about this, so many other people can relate.
So,
And I think so first recognizing that, gosh, everybody's story is different, and maybe
mhm,
just having some empathy and understanding and just being there for them might
right.
mean more than, I think you should do this and I think you should do that. If you're not in that situation, you really have no idea. And sometimes that's just the support you need. And we have mentioned it before. It's so important to have a group of people that you can turn to. So I'm
Right.
really glad that you have that.
Yeah. And I think too, the funny thing is with that, when you share your story, when you share Nathan's story and people all the time, like, what do you think happened? Yeah, what do you think happened that made her become anorexic? Well, it's like a complex
Interesting.
neurobiological illness. I don't think there was one thing. It wasn't just, I'm not saying this happened, but one girl on social media calling her fat or
Right.
me
Right.
dieting all my life and saying stuff. I mean, if I could go back knowing what I know now, I would not have been as vocal, even though I wasn't doing it to them in front of them. Them hearing me say, oh, I wish my butt was smaller, or I wish I
Mm.
didn't eat that. I feel so bad about myself because I didn't work out today. Like, just making any way, like, all eating is okay. Of course, there's moderation, there's overeating, eating disorders too, but just not making that the focus of our worth, what I look like and what my body looks like and what I'm doing, I would change that. Please never ask a person with a kid with a psychological illness, why do you think that happened? Because there's
Well,
no, there's, if we knew that, then it would have never happened in the first place, right? Not just anorexia, but all mental health issues are a very complex neurobiological slash nature nurture, like genetics, exposure. So there's so many things that come to it. It's not one thing that causes these kids to be anorexic or bulimic or have AFRID, which is avoidant restrictive food intake disease.
I
Yeah,
think you make such a good point. If you don't fully understand, don't make comments like that, and be judgmental of how people are parenting because you have no idea.
right.
So I think the best thing is to just try to have empathy and try to listen. And I think that's great advice, what you're saying for all of us, because even if we say we don't do that, we all do that. So it's something to remember. And then
Yeah.
also when you say making comments around your kids, I don't have daughters, but I say things. Nathan will say, Mom, you're not fat, or Mom, you look fine. He'll make comments back to me. So that leads me to believe that I say things that I don't
Yeah.
even realize I'm saying. So it's
Yeah.
easy to go back and be like, I shouldn't have said that, but
Yeah.
we all do.
Right. And Tammy, you were saying earlier, we live in this world, constant barrage on social media. When we were growing up, we had maybe a Polaroid camera, or we turn in film later. There's some pictures, but these kids are constantly looking at themselves, not by vanity, just by like how social media is. It's like that
mm,
constant. Could you imagine having an illness where everybody's telling you you need to eat more in your real life? On social media, everybody's saying what they ate in a day and talking about the GLP-1s, which are those Ozempic things. You're you're
oh,
like in this world like a fish swimming upstream. Everybody else is on this kick of like weight loss and Ozempic and eating protein only and carbs are bad, fat's bad.
Right.
And then in your private world, your parents and your caregivers and your doctor are like, you should do this. They don't believe you because everybody else on the internet says this. They're not physicians. Any loser can say whatever they want on social media and it's suddenly fact, right?
And you
So,
also don't know what she sees in the mirror. So you can't
yeah.
even begin to understand. We all look in the mirror and see something different than what people
Mhm.
see. That's why, and we mentioned this in our last podcast, when you see something good about someone, you need to remember to tell them. Not that they'll always believe you. You look very joyful today, or you've got this glow. When you see things
Right.
like that, it's very important to tell people because who knows what they're telling themselves.
Right. Yeah,
yeah.
So,
exactly.
wow. Well, that was a very important episode. I mean, you gave us an idea kind of where you were going. Again, we could have you on for 3 or 4 other podcasts for other directions for sure. So we have so many different stories, but that was so relatable on so many levels to us as people, to us as women, to all of the listeners, to people as parents, to people as parents with those that have special needs or have disorders, and how to go about some things, and to also know that it's okay to talk about these things as well, and to share with your friends and your family and your loved ones, to put it out there to make it okay. Obviously, we don't want to embarrass Julia or harp on any of it. And we just hope that she continues to recover and find her independence and find her way. So when she does go away to college, she can focus on all of the fun things like meeting great people like you, like we all met in college, instead of having to worry about, did I eat enough food? So I really will continue to pray and hope for that for her. Happy birthday. I hope the 17th year is a really, really good one for her.
Time
And
flies.
it really does. Gosh, I remember when she was born. That's just insane.
With all that
But
red curly
It
hair.
that
is,
red
oh
curly
my
hair, I could
gosh.
just see her. But thank you so much for sharing all of that. I think so many of these episodes, like Tammy said, we don't even know which direction they're going to go in, but they're so important for us listeners. And I really hope people can relate and get a lot out of what you shared, even all the nerdy stuff.
Thanks for letting me invite myself to your
Oh,
show.
of course. No, everybody has a story to share. I'll put it out there to the listeners. If you have stories you want to share, we want you on here. And it doesn't have to be all women, but that's what it's been so far. We love when women get together and empower one another and support one another. And we'll always do that with our sisters always. I do think we could keep going, but I definitely want to be respectful of a very, very busy mom's life and also of those listening. And we're very glad that you joined us today and just appreciate you so much. Is there anything else that you think our listeners need to hear?
I think I'll just leave it at I'm always willing to talk about this as a professional or on the personal side as a caregiver of a kid with an eating disorder. If you don't feel like you can tell anybody, you can reach out to me, check in their show notes, and they can put you through a contact with me. And I'm always willing to listen and sometimes just complain about it as a chronic caregiver. It's exhausting or
Yeah.
whatever. So
Thank you for that. And we'll definitely put your contact information in our show notes for our listeners to check out. But thank you so much for being on. I mean, it was a very heavy topic, but I still go back to what I said at the beginning. Every time you're around, people are going to smile. People are going to have laughs. So appreciate the humor and the lighter side too that you brought in to a very heavy subject.
thanks, guys.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for joining us for the Show Me the Way podcast. We truly appreciate you tuning in to today's episode about overcoming adversity and finding your path. We hope it brought you new insights, empowered you with perspective, and inspired you to find joy in your journey. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and share it with someone who could use a little motivation. Until next time, keep seeking the light and showing the way.